Hi, I'm Searle and I'm here today to talk about my own very personal experiences with uh, care for the elderly, being a Jewish person, and being involved in the largest religion-based care facility for Jewish people in the UK, Jewish Care. And I came to this in a sort of roundabout kind of way. I'm not a social scientist. I have a background in having worked in various projects around older Jews who were LGBTQ plus, are LGBTQ plus. The first one was Rainbow Jews, which was from about 2011 to 2014, and it was a national lottery funded project. And the whole idea was to document and put a marker down of Jewish LGBTQ plus experience in the UK and have it archived. So all this stuff is now in the Metropolitan Archive in the City of London. And that really was my first real engagement with getting older and being an LGBTQ plus person, being Jewish, and what is that, how does that all hang together? Because obviously, traditionally, and in a somewhat stereotypical way, we always think about gay male culture as being, 20 and dancing, etc. Um, I was involved with this group. It was very productive. And as a consequence of that, I got involved in another national lottery project, which was around ritual for LGBTQ plus Jews and how this ritual, which was not entirely religious, but to a large degree religious, or it stemmed from religious practice, how that might differ from the kind of heteronormative type of ritual. And again, so many inspiring ideas came out of that. And most of the people who contributed to that were older people. And then at the same time as that, I was working on a PhD, which was looking at Jewish London, but from a gay male perspective. I wanted to see, because Jews typically are seen as having no space, physical space, in a city like London. We're in schools, we're in synagogues, etc., in community centres, but we don't inhabit the street. And there have been various projects about gay men on the street. So I thought, well, do we have a space on the street? And that threw up a whole lot of other stuff. And again, not all, but most of the men that I worked with were older. Not all, but most of them. And I tried to get as wide a perspective as possible. People of different colors, people of different social backgrounds, different educational backgrounds. Um, and through all of that, I suddenly was introduced to an academic group who were operating out of a group of universities in the UK. Um, and it struck me, working with this group, which was very productive for me, because I knew very little about elderly care, particularly pertaining to LGBTQ persons. What really struck me is that there was a very kind of almost automatic assumption that experience was very negative, or at best neutral. Um, and that a lot of the people who were talking about the whole issue of religion and how that might inform um, older LGBTQ experience and residential care, daycare, whatever, it struck me that a lot of the people didn't have very much knowledge, hard knowledge of religion in their lives. And I thought, well, it seemed to me we needed to explore that more. And through that group, indirectly, I was connected through a rabbi to Jewish Care. It took a long time because I think they were quite concerned that my motives were legitimate and supportive. But after about a year, I had I had a preliminary chat with someone who was very senior in the organization, and then I had an extremely lengthy interview with two people who are focused on training at Jewish Care. It was very detailed. I thought, wow, this feels like I'm going for a job or something. And at the end, they said, we want you to be part of our integrated approach to LGBTQ training in this organization. And I had made the point all through my interview that I didn't want to do it as LGBTQ training. I'm not sort of professionally trained in that area where I thought my skills lie. As a Jewish gay man, that I actually, of a certain age, because I'm over 60, the whole idea was to look at how the two work together, the intersectional aspect of being Jewish and being gay, etc. And they were very interested in this because they spend a lot of time training. A lot of their care workers are not Jewish, but a lot of them come from faith, and faith is very important in their lives. And so they do have a program introducing Judaism, etc. And the idea of finding a way of integrating that with an LGBTQ plus message was very interesting for them. And it was just inspiring. I came out of there, I literally skipped down the road. I thought, this is amazing. After 3 hours of being in there, to come out with an actual offer of the training was fantastic for me. And I've been working with the training department now since the end of 2022. And we have now written the program. It's a pilot program for care staff. And our whole approach has been empathy. Our whole approach has been what for Jewish care is person-centered care. It's all about the relationship of the care worker to the individual resident in the care home. And the idea was to draw on the experiences. A lot of the care workers are foreign by birth and have suffered enormously from racism and various forms of painful experience. So we start with that. We start by getting them to identify their relationship to anything that is very negative and very destructive potentially in their lives. They bring that on board, and then we introduce some of the films that I actually made in these earlier projects under the funding of National Lottery, like Rainbow Jews, etc. And we asked them to comment on those. And so what have they learned about Judaism that they didn't know already? What have they learned about LGBTQ plus that they didn't know already? How can they improve the community life of Jewish care? Okay, it's very much about creating a community atmosphere that is inclusive. And it's been such a positive experience for me. I know I speak from a very narrow bandwidth. I have a very limited experience. I'm not a person who can call themselves a social scientist. I don't know a lot about the care network in the UK, but my personal experience has been very, very positive. And what I so like from the word go, there has always been an emphasis of, okay, Searle, we've got you as a resource, but we don't want only the pilot training, okay, which goes, by the way, from care worker right up to senior management. But it's largely focused on care workers. How can we make this less formal? What can we do to make you a part of our community, which is less about you coming in and doing a training session? So what I do now is I've dropped into a few of their centres around London and Essex, where I talk about my life as a Jewish man who's gay. Okay, and I get a lot of people coming who are straight, but they come and they talk to me about what it was like coming out to my parents, how I felt about never getting married as a Jewish man, because of course, it's part of our culture to get married, have babies, etc. And I'm of a generation where that initially wasn't available to me anyway. And I am, as it happens, getting married at the end of the year, but babies are unlikely at this stage of the game. But all these how did your mother react? Did she cry? How did your dad react? How did it work within the network of the synagogue that you belong to? These things are so good for them to hear. And then one of the centers I went into, whose manager is very, very open to new ideas, new initiatives. On the back of my initial visit, he's now set up a coffee morning, an LGBTQ coffee morning for everybody. It's about people who are, family members, friends, supportive individuals, members of the community themselves, whatever their sexual gender definitions, very welcome to come. And I see what's happening in Jewish care as something which is so thrilling, I'd say, because when I went to the interview, I thought I'm going for broke here, and I said, I am of a generation. You're not dealing with a 90-year-old who, comes cap in hand and is so happy for any little meager acceptance. I'm a person who fought for my freedoms, who grew up with my freedoms, who lived through the AIDS epidemic, who had many, many issues to deal with along the road. And if I come into a care home, I will demand a place at the table. And I said, you guys have got to start putting in place the sort of provision where people like me, who are your customers in the next 15, 20 years, we will be looking for that kind of support. We will be demanding that kind of support. And I could see them all scribbling away. And all I can say is the message, I'm sure they had the message embedded already somewhere. It wasn't only me. But it was so taken on board. And I think that despite all the horrors that you read about of people being abused and treated very badly for all sorts of reasons in residential care of the elderly, I do believe that we are at a turning point and that there is a lot of very good work out there, and I am so happy to be part of the Jewish care community working on this. It's very, very important to me, and I'm thrilled.